Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Financial First Aid. Bankrupt entrepreneurs hire financial first aid to go from broke to bank. We show them that bankruptcy is not an end, but a beginning with a fresh start. We motivate, educate, and inspire the entrepreneur in you. Today, I have the great pleasure of having Mr. Michael Whitehouse. Michael Whitehouse is the guy who knows a guy. In 2014, he came to Groton, Connecticut, knowing no one at all. A year later, after diving into networking with both feet, he was a major connector in the local community. In 2020, he went global and began connecting entrepreneurs, investors, speakers, and others from all over the world, from people that they need to know. He has built a six-figure business as a networking concierge, making connections and building strategic alliances around the world. He's international, everybody. He is the host of the daily morning motivation podcast, Power 5 podcast, and the upcoming Neurodiversity Superpowers podcast. Welcome, Michael. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, tell people what the name of your company is.
So the name it is known by is The Guy Who Knows a Guy.
Great.
And the name of my actual company is a whole different story. But The Guy Who Knows a Guy is my public brand. And that actually came from the name of this book, The Guy Who Knows a Guy, because I started by writing the book because as you mentioned in the bio, I moved here in 2014, didn't know anybody. Jumped in, just ignorance on fire. Started going to every network event I could. I knew where networking happened, but not how, and just started connecting. And as I'm meeting with people, I've got no business. I've got no assets. I've got nothing to offer except the people I've already met. So to make it so I'm not wasting people's time, I'd make some introductions for them. And I'd realize that they didn't know these people. And I'm like, you guys have lived here for 50 years. How do you not know each other? But they didn't. So I was providing that value. And after a year or two, when I realized I was making some pretty significant connections of significant value, I was getting to be known as a connector, even though I was new. And I realized I know what I did. I could write it down. Anyone could do it. So wrote it in a book, started as that. For the longest time, I was just the guy who wrote a book. And then over time, I had a website for it, guyknowsaguy.com. And whenever I did something, I just put it on the website I already had. So sort of like hanging ornaments on the Christmas tree. You got that site. It's just a sprawling mass, and you can do like archaeological digs through it of stuff I've put up and never took down, and it's great. I think actually we were talking before, you found a bio from a year and a half ago that mentions a company I don't run and a podcast I don't run anymore. But what happened was when the pandemic came and I said, I'm going all in to me. I'm going to stop working for other people. I'm going to stop chasing after jobs, safe jobs, because I decided at one point, I'm going to play it safe. Let's get a job. That didn't work either. So I'm like, I'm doing my thing. I'm following my path finally. And well, what's my path? Well, I got this website with all these things on it. I wrote a book. I know networking. Let's start there. And it worked out pretty good.
Okay. So it just really mushroomed from an idea of the guy who knows a guy who just does networking things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say more bambooed, because bamboo will sit under the surface for like 20 years. And then grow 20 feet in 3 months. That was basically my path, was 20 years of, and then 6 months of explosive growth. Once I finally crossed that threshold and figured out really what my offer was and what I had that people would pay for.
Okay, so you know what? Let's kind of flush that out a little bit. How did you even, come to find out, what it is you had to offer? Like, how did that click?
Yeah. So in 2020, I sort of walked backwards into coaching. I was still publishing a local community magazine, and that magazine is for a larger company, and their strategy is all face-to-face. Like, we can't do this remote. You can't sell over the phone. You got to get face-to-face with somebody. Right. And then in 3 days, it was, we sell online now because we had to.
Well, you know what? Well, Michael, we are face-to-face. We're just not face-to-face touching each other.
Yep. But yeah, and it was funny because this was so early in the pandemic. Their strategy was you send them a link to a basically PowerPoint presentation and use the phone, because not everyone knows how to use Zoom, and we don't want to mess around with these video calls. They're too complicated. So let's keep it simple and use the phone. The quaint old days of March 2020.
Yes.
So I went But the big thing I lost was in-person networking. 75% of my sales came from in-person networking.
Right.
And so without that, I went from 2 sales a month to 1 sale a quarter. And I had this moment of I could learn from scratch how to run someone else's program. And instead of using the proven system that I'd already been having trouble mastering, I'd have to do a new one they were making up as they went along.
Right.
I said, if I'm going to make it up as I go along, I might as well do my thing.
Right.
But in the course of this, someone introduced me to a tool that was a data scraper. So it get me lists of phone numbers and whatnot. And through that, I met a coach who taught me a strategy that would allow me to sell effectively through social media chat and that sort of thing. It was great for coaches. It didn't work for magazines.
Right.
And so I tried it for the magazine. It didn't work at all. And I'm talking to this coach who taught it to me. And he says, well, why not be a coach? You know a lot of stuff. You can help people. You got all the traits to be a coach. You now know how to sell it. Why not?
Right.
And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I did it. And I sold 10 clients in 10 weeks. And that's why I said, I'm quitting this magazine. I got a business here, except for one slight problem. I didn't actually know how to coach. Some of those 10 clients, 8 of them dropped off in a month.
Oh, no.
So it was month to month. So 8 of them didn't renew. And I was like, oh. And I realized I don't have anything to offer these people. I don't have the skills and the experience. I'm selling an empty box. So that led me on a journey of a little over a year to figure out, so what am I doing? I ended up driving DoorDash and Uber so I could have a runway because I wasn't making money, obviously. So by driving Uber, I could pay the bills, which meant I wasn't scraping for like, where's the next dollar? I'm like, the next dollar's on the road. I'll do that for as long as it takes. I'll do that. And in my mind, I'll do that for a few months. Turned out to be 13, but I'll do that for a few months until I find what I need. During the course of that time, I talked to thousands of entrepreneurs. I interviewed about 50 of them on my podcast, explicitly saying, you're successful. How'd you get that way? To figure out what they were doing. And finally in November, during the course of all this, I realized you need some kind of high ticket offer, right? All the funnels are, you give away a freebie and then they do this and this and this, and they buy your high ticket program. 1,000, 1,000, or you have some kind of systems. You're selling a whole lot of really low cost programs, but that takes infrastructure to manage that many clients. So I had neither of these things. And I'm thinking, I know a lot of people, I know a lot of stuff, but how do I package it into something?
Right.
And I was talking to my friend Phil Palucha, who's the host of Billionaires and Boxers. And
yep, I know Phil. I did a podcast with him. He's a great guy.
And he said to me, Michael, some people get paid to make introductions. And I'm like, what's that, Phil? And most of the people in the space is because they have specialty connections. So they know people in Hollywood, they know people in the financial industry, they know people in politics. But he figured in theory, if they can get paid for it, this model could work for what I'm doing.
Right.
So I started talking to people. Basically, as I was having more calls, I shared this idea and I was like, what are your thoughts? And finally, one person said, wait, so you meet with like 60, 80 people a month and you could sift through them for the people I want to meet? And I'd pay you to do that. And you just send them to me. And I only talk to the ones that you think that you sift through. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. He said, how much do you want for that? Because I want to sign up.
Excellent.
And what I realized fairly quickly was there's a need for that, because someone asked me recently, they said, how'd you get into networking? And I joked, because I'm not good at anything else. Most people, they spend their time on they're building their course, they're doing graphic design, they're building websites, they're doing whatever it is. For lack of anything else to do, I was just networking more because I love it. I love meeting people. I have since discovered it's partly an ADHD trait that meeting new people creates dopamine.
Okay.
So I used to joke that I networked compulsively, and then realized that's not a joke. I literally neurologically network compulsively. But so I'm perfectly happy to be networking 20, 30 hours a week, but most people aren't. Most people would rather be doing the thing they do, not meeting a whole bunch of people.
Right.
They want to meet the people they need to meet, but they don't want to meet a whole lot of people.
Right.
So I go out and meet a whole lot of people, and I kiss all the frogs, introduce my clients to the ones that turn into princes. And the perfect person for person A is not the perfect person for person B. So if I meet 80 people, then 50 of them might be someone to introduce to one of my clients. But any individual client would only want to meet 5, 10, 15 of them. So if they did all that work, they'd be wasting a lot of their time. They'd meet 65 people who weren't great connections for them, whereas I meet 50 or 60 are great connections for my clients collectively. So effectively, I am renting out space on my whiteboard of clients. Sounds more impressive when I say it that way. So when I meet with people, I just look at the board and I say, who on that board needs to meet the person on my screen, make a couple of connections, and then my clients get to have 10, 15 good conversations a month with the right people, as opposed to sifting through dozens and dozens of meetings. And, they don't have to go to the 3-day networking conference. They don't have to go to, they don't have to go to all these different networking groups to meet people because they got me out there. I've actually had some of my clients say, oh yeah, that event sounds great. You're going to it, right? And I said, well, yeah, but if you're there, you'll meet them directly. He said, no, you're going to it, right? Good. Send me the best people. So I don't want to go. You go.
Exactly. Yeah.
And some of these, a single introduction were $10,000, $20,000, $50,000.
Right.
So to them, it's a no-brainer to pay the relatively small amount I charge, which to me at the time was a very large amount. And 6-figure business, so it adds up.
Yes.
$1,000 here, $1,000 there. Sooner or later, it adds up to real money.
Yes, indeed. And so that was one of my questions for you. What was your, how did you start your journey to entrepreneurship? But actually, you answered it, by simply saying, hey, you started at zero and you found out what you were really good at, and from what you were really good at, you developed a business.
Well, mostly I found out what I was really bad at, and what was left was. So actually I started, when I first graduated college, I got impatient trying to find a job. Like I couldn't deal with this whole sending resumes thing, and I just opened a game store.
Is that part of the ADHD thing?
Probably. But if it weren't for the ADHD, I would have found a job, and then I probably would have stayed at the job.
Right.
And I wouldn't have done everything I'm doing now, and I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have clients in 4 countries, and I wouldn't be a professional connector, and I, wouldn't be. When my friend posts on Facebook, oh, I got fired from my job and I don't know what to do, I know what to do. Whether they listen to me or not, it's a whole different thing. But like if I have someone come to me and say, hey, I'm ready to do it, I'm ready to listen, can you help me get a job? Yeah, I can have them working in 30 days, no problem. Right. And so the ability to do that is really cool.
Yeah, it's worth money to people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these the friends I'm helping are broke. That's why they need my help. But the thing is, if you serve the right audience, you serve the right customers, they pay your bills. They pay to support the company. And now you're free to help the people who can't afford you. And that took me a long time to realize. Because at first I was like, but I want to help the people coming up behind me. I want to help the people who are broke and struggling and suffering. And even back when I was driving Uber, just knowing Uber was the solution was something people needed to know. Because I was making $30 an hour driving Uber, which does not feel like work at all. Like I'm driving a car, talking to people, and listening to audiobooks for $30 an hour. That's not work. That's like something I do for fun. Driving and talking to people. I'd pay for that.
It was easy for you because that's kind of your natural space.
Yeah. But I wanted to help those people, and it took me the longest time to realize the people I want to help are broke. And so that drains resources. Yes. So I needed to find clients who could afford to pay what I was worth,
right,
and could put the money in the bank and take care of that, so that I could then serve the ones I want to serve. So like I have time set aside my week to coach people who can't afford me. So when someone comes to me and they've got a cool idea, but they don't know anything about branding, they don't know anything about marketing, they need to help figuring it out, putting together details, whatever. I have that time blocked out, which I can afford to block out,
right?
Because my clients support that. And the cool thing is, I work with the kinds of people, I don't often talk to them in detail about this, but I work with the kind of people who, if they realize that they're paying me with supporting me to help other people, they would see it as a bonus.
Right.
They'd be like, oh, wow, I pay you, you help me, and you pay it forward, even better. Whereas there's some clients out there who are like, wait, if you got that time, why don't you give it to me? Whereas I think that I wouldn't want to work with people who are that mercenary. So people who are more about giving and benefiting. And I don't want to make introductions to people who are super there either. So
Right. Exactly. Yep.
that's part of it.
That's great. So I was going to ask you about the 9 to 5 piece, and you were about to tell me that when you graduated college, you never really had a 9 to 5 because you went into some kind of business.
Yeah, so I opened a game store, like board games, role-playing games. I would later learn that I was running it completely wrong, because there is a way to run a game store that makes money, and I was actively avoiding that.
Okay.
So that was
Effectively avoiding making money.
Yeah, I was doing everything but the part of the industry that makes money. So that worked well. So the business was wildly successful, except for never making any money. But yeah, so from there, I taught driving. I taught people specialties to drive. I sold cars. I sold insurance. I sold magazine advertising. I sold printing. So I had a few different jobs in my time. Some of which I suppose were 9 to 5-ish, or 9 to 5 like. But yeah, once the pandemic hit, there was no going back.
Right.
Because once I figured out that I could do gig work to pay my bills for as long as it takes to figure it out, like, people talk about going back to their 9 to 5. There's no 9 to 5 to go back to. Anything I could have gone back to didn't pay enough and took up all my time and was miserable. So it's not like there was a safe job I could go back to that would pay the bills. And for more and more Americans, I don't know if that's true in other countries, but for more and more Americans, there's no safe job. The job they're sitting in, they're slowly starving. They're building up debt. They have no, even if they are keeping up, they're one flat tire away from disaster. Forget medical emergencies. A flat tire a tire these days costs $400 or 100 something bucks. But tires wear out. Mechanics just need new tires. I don't have $500. And if you don't have any savings because your job paid you just enough to pay your rent and survive, there's no safe job there.
Right.
So once I got to that point where I said, all right, I'm good at a bunch of stuff. There's a business here somewhere. And that was the focus. And anything else I did was simply to pay the bills until I got there.
Okay.
I was prepared. I was hoping I wouldn't, but I was prepared to do some kind of gig work for years if I needed to. Remember, when I first started driving DoorDash, when the pandemic was still such that I did not want strangers in my car, but started doing DoorDash, and I realized, because at the time I was doing some free coaching, which even with my limited abilities, I was still helpful to people, because a lot of what a coach does is ask questions. And I said, if I get to if this is where I stay, I drive DoorDash to pay my bills, and I do coaching for free and help people out, and that's my life for the next 20 years. I'm okay with that. That's not terrible, right? The job's not awful. Helping people is great. This is okay. This is not where I want to stay. Like, this is an okay ledge as I climb the mountain. And that took all the pressure off, because now there is no hurry. There's no impatience. If the business takes 5 years for me to find my place or to develop, whatever. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Okay.
And it didn't take 5 years. It only took 1 year. So.
Well, that was a question that I had as well. In this time of kind of post-pandemic, and people are trying to figure out, like, what do we do? What's my next step? What would you say to someone who's considering, starting a business, or maybe doubtful that they should start a business? What's your kind of response to that idea?
So first off, no one should be doubtful about starting a business, because our economy is built for entrepreneurs. And the more I look at entrepreneurship versus being a worker, the more I'm like, how do companies keep employees at all? When I saw the Great Resignation, I'm like, how are there any employees staying behind? I'll never forget, I was driving DoorDash, $24 an hour, to sit in my car and listen to audiobooks. And occasionally I had to put food on doorsteps. And I drove through the drive-through at McDonald's, because you usually go through drive-through and they give you the bag. And I remember thinking, this person makes $12 an hour to do that, which I don't want to do that. And I make $24 an hour doing this. And all you need is a functioning automobile to drive DoorDash. It doesn't matter what kind, you just need a car. And I'm thinking, if she ever figures out what I know, McDonald's going to be in trouble. This is like January, February 2021. Oh, from the news reports in the summer of 2021, I think a few of them figured it out.
That's right. Some of them did.
Yep. And the only reason people didn't was because there was so much propaganda, for lack of a better word, against gig work, saying it's not real work. You don't have the protections an employee does. Like, protections? What protections does an employee have? If you get fired, you can hire a lawyer and sue them and then not get any money. I guess that's a protection. But so Uber, for example, I made about 78, 80 cents a mile if he divided the income by the miles. The deduction for mileage is what, 58 cents a mile? So if you make 78 cents a mile and you can deduct 58 cents a mile, but it actually costs you 21 cents a mile to drive your car,
right?
You just have a tax advantage job.
Yep.
So when people talk about that, you get to be an employee, I'm like, that's not better, that's worse. Everything is rigged for entrepreneurs. When people talk about, like, it's rigged for the rich, yes-ish, but most of those advantages the rich get is because they own businesses.
Exactly.
And you could own a $50,000 a year business, $30,000 a year business, and get a lot of those advantages.
Yes.
So did you start a business? Yes.
Right.
Hey, quit your job, go back as a consultant. They'll pay you more and respect you more to do the same work.
You're absolutely right. Yep. You're absolutely right.
But so for someone who's now hearing that and being like, okay, cool, I don't know how to start a business. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I can't, I don't want to drive Uber for 2 years. The first step is figure out, sit down and really think about what is your perfect life. Before you get to the business, what is the life you want? If you could live any life you want, if you won the lottery, how would you live? Would you go on a lot of vacations? Would you spend a lot of time reading? Would you hang out with friends? Would you never see anyone again? Figure out what that perfect life is and then work it backwards. So once you know what that perfect life is, that might tell you what your business is. True. My perfect life, I'd be meeting people all day long every day.
And that's your perfect life.
Oh, look, that's my life now, and I get paid for it.
That's right.
So I mean, some people are like, oh, I want to sit on a beach every day. Most people don't. Most people like, after 4 days on the beach, I'm bored. I want to. You want to sit on the beach for 4 days because that's how long it'll take to decompress from your job.
Right.
But that's not the life you want. That's just your immediate cortisol-driven need.
Right.
Like that is the water you need because your house is on fire. But once you can get past that, what is the life you really want?
Right.
That might inform what your business is. And if not, it's a matter of figuring out, what are you good at? What do you like doing? And what would someone pay you for? And if you're really good at something, whatever it is, someone's willing to pay you for it.
Yes.
The extreme example I use is if you're a fine artist, you paint, I don't know, portraits or abstracts or whatever. There is someone with too much money out there who likes art and has no artistic talent.
Right.
And they would happily pay you $50,000 a year to be your patron so that they could make art by stroking a check instead of by stroking a canvas.
Exactly. Yes,
it's
indeed.
Just, there may be one person on earth who's willing to be your patron. But if you are an artist, you don't say, okay, well, where's the money? You say, what do I want to do? Now, how can I get paid for it? Right. I want to network 25 hours a week. How can I get paid for it? Right. Okay, can that generate something that creates value? Now, maybe you're an artist, you just like making art, you don't care what it is. I love color composition and doing the thing, and I don't care if I'm making it for magazine ads or animation or fine art, or I just want to make art. Well, that opens up the options of what you could do. Or you're like, nope, I only want to make the art that my muse drives me to make. Okay, that is now the question. Now, it's not as easy to say, how do I get someone to pay me to make the art that my muse drives me towards? But once you said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, now let me find it. Let me manifest a solution and start telling people, hey, someone's willing to pay me to make this art. I'm looking for a patron. I make this art. I'm looking for a patron so I can make art full time, and they will know they're bringing art into the world through their money. And I'm looking for that person. Who do you know? And just start putting that out there, because someone is going to hear that and say, wow, that's interesting. I want to talk to you. Oh, let me introduce you to people, see what they think about it. But you have to put it out with confidence. If you're like, I wish I could find a patron. Yeah, don't we all? We all wish. We wish we win lottery. I'm going to find a patron. I'm on my journey to find a patron to pay me to be a full-time artist. Wait, that's a thing? Of course it's a thing. Someone has money, they're going to give it to me. I'm going to make art. And the example I use for, like, this is not crazy. There was a man I knew who owned a financial company. He had dozens of financial advisors under him and a financial academy, and he wanted to create a nonprofit to teach financial literacy. He didn't know much about nonprofits, but he knew he wanted to teach financial literacy. And so he, out of his pocket, hired an executive director at like $60,000 a year to run it. And she presumably would eventually do the fundraising and figure out how to set up a board and all that kind of stuff. And he just wrote the check and said, figure it out.
Right.
And I was talking to him one day about it. And I was like, you're spending $6,000 a year on that. He says, so I don't buy another car this year. Because there are people out there that $6,000 their hobby money.
Right.
Shifting their hobbies. So yeah, so I don't buy a new BMW this year. I pay for an artist to paint all year instead.
Mm-hmm.
That's, what's a car gonna do for me? Whereas I can point to this artwork and be like, I made that, kind of.
Or at least I paid somebody to make it for me.
So whatever it is, but if that's possible, and the reason I use that as the example, if that is possible, then anything else is possible. Whatever it is you're good at, especially if there's some commercial application like making connections or talking. I know someone who runs a business that's just listening. So you pay $25, 15 minutes, and you talk, they listen appreciatively. So they're not just silent. They'll say, tell me more about that. Yeah. Which a lot of people don't have their lives. So they'll pay for it. Who would think you have a business that is just listening to people? Yet you do. So whatever it is that you're great at and love doing, someone will pay for it.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. That's great. Now, you said you're starting a new thing, Neurodiversity Superpowers. What's that about?
Yes. So I have met, in the thousands of entrepreneurs I've met, many of them have some diagnosed neurotype. So neurodiversity originally meant autism, then was expanded to mean autism, ADHD, and was then expanded to basically be any way the brain's configured that's not your standard brain configuration. And I have met many, many entrepreneurs who are successful because of their neurodiversity.
Right.
Autism that makes them able to understand systems and processes better than neurotypical. My ADHD took me a little while to figure out that it was a superpower, but without it, I'd be working some corporate job.
Right.
With it, I have started so many jobs, like I have 70 years of experience in 20 years, because you do most of your learning in the first couple months. And ADHD actually drives you into the situations where you're going to learn the most, because that's what gives the dopamine. So learning new things, trying new things, doing new things, meeting new people. That's why I compulsively network. So I meet so many people because my brain drives me to do it, which makes me a pretty darn good networker and coach, because I know a little bit about everything. The Power 5 podcast is just people send questions. I answer them in 5 minutes or less, because I know I have a 5-minute answer to almost any question. You want half an hour? I might not know half an hour worth, but 5 minutes just to get you started, point you in the right direction. Because my ADD drives me to look at everything, meet everybody, talk to everyone. I'm all over the place, which is bad until you're using it in the right place.
Right.
So I want to change the narrative on neurodiversity from a disability, a challenge. Won't someone think of the children? Could you find it in your heart to accommodate these poor, broken-brained people on your team? And to change it instead to, oh, you have neurodiversity. You're autistic. You have ADHD. You have dyslexia. Neat. That means you could launch your own business and be wildly successful, because your best thing is better than other people's best thing. And that's all that matters in entrepreneurship. And in the corporate world, you have a neurodiverse person on your team. If you can accommodate them, they'll outperform any two people on the team.
Right.
In their strength.
Right.
So,
Yep.
if you have an
Mhm.
autistic engineer who is great at engineering and terrible at people, and you don't make him go to meetings, then he's as
Right.
good as any two engineers.
Yep.
You force him
Exactly.
to go to the morning meeting, the lunch meeting, the afternoon meeting, you might as well fire him because you won't get any work done because he's got to decompress for 2 hours after each meeting to get his mind right again. But the accommodations are simple if you listen to them.
Right.
And the rewards can be huge. And I want to change the narrative from, do it because it's the right thing to do, please, to do it because you're going to make more money. Bosses don't care about right things. Bosses care about money.
Right. The bottom line.
Yeah, they care about the results it's going to give. And beyond neurodiversity, it's true for everyone. Let people work the way they work best. They're going to be more efficient. They're going to be happier. They're not going to ask for raises as often. They're not going to complain as much. If you have a job that doesn't pay great, but you love it, you'd be like, what can you do? Guess I'll be broke and happy. Someone offers them $10,000 a year more, they won't take it because they're so happy where they are. And who knows what the new place is like.
That's right.
But so that's the narrative I want to create.
Okay.
By sharing these stories of people who say, my autism allowed me to be successful. My ADHD allowed me to be successful. My dyslexia allowed me, gave me the resources, the tools, the assets to find success.
Yep. Great. I love that. That is really, really nice. A different spin on being different. So I always end my podcast with asking my guests 3 takeaways that they can give my audience, and that's to educate, motivate, and inspire. So can you give me one thing that you would say to educate? I mean, I think the whole podcast has been educational so far, but any one thing.
Educate, motivate, and inspire. Okay. Where do I put this in the right boxes?
You can put it in any box you'd like because you're neurodiverse.
In order. 30 minutes. Pause the recording so I can figure that one out.
I'm going to let you have free reign.
So educate, motivate, and inspire. So on the, I guess you go the educate on this one, which is often the lesson I leave people with in networking space, which is that anyone can be a connector when they decide to be. Because everyone knows somebody. You've got some family members, probably some coworkers, some neighbors. And once you decide to be a connector and start saying, well, who do I know who can help you? And thinking that way, you'll start to find them. Once you start making connections, you're going to start getting introduced to people to make more connections.
There you go.
And it comes naturally. So to motivate, I will reiterate the idea that America is a land of opportunity, not guaranteed prosperity.
There you go. That's a good one. I like that.
It's like a buffet. No one's coming to the table to serve you, but everything's at the buffet. No one's stopping you either. And we were lulled into this false sense of security or false sense of ease in the 50s and 60s, which weirdly, most people today weren't around then. And yet we still carry that ethos that you should be able to get a job and it's going to take care of you. Sorry, it doesn't. That's the demotivating side. Motivating side is, but anyone can become an entrepreneur and almost everyone should, because that's what our economy is built for.
Yep. I totally agree.
Yep. And so inspire, I'll go with what's recent in my mind, the neurodiversity side, which is that everyone has some form of greatness. There's something everyone is great at. Neurodiversity often creates what they call spikier profile. So it's the average person's like between a 5 and an 8 on everything. And the neurodiverse person's between a 1 and a 10. They're 1s on some things and 10s on others, but still you've got an 8, you've got a 9, you've got a 10 somewhere in your greatness profile, whether you're great at talking to people or great at painting or great at writing or great at paying attention or great at not sleeping for 3 days at a time. You're great at something. And if you can just match that greatness up to someone willing to pay for it, you've got a business or a job, and that's your opportunity. And everyone has that. So if you can plug that together, you can be successful. You won't be worried about money anymore. You won't be worried about opportunity anymore. It will all just follow from that.
Wow, fantastic. So, Mr. Michael Whitehouse, how can my audience get in touch with you?
Well, the best way is to go to guywhoknowsaguy.com, and they will find on that main page links to all my podcasts and everything else, whatever I'm doing. at the moment when they're listening to this.
Uh-huh.
And at the top of it, there will be a form they can fill out to get a free copy of my book, The Guy
Okay.
Who Knows Guy.
I actually have that.
Whitehouse.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so they can just right at the top of the page, got a place to fill out the info there. And at the moment, if you go to the right side, you can click a link which will take you to sign up for one of my connection bonanzas, because my calendar was getting very full of connections. So I said, I bet I could make a lot of connections for a lot of people at once. So I have these 1 hour sessions, 9 people, they tell me what they're looking for. I make 0 to 3 introductions, and then off to the next person. Everyone hears what everyone else is looking for. Connections get made. And yeah, most people, they just want my connections. They don't want to meet me. So you get to come to the connection bonanza. We meet briefly, we make some connections. And if there's more reason to connect beyond that, then we can do that. But you can do that all from guywhoknowsaguy.com.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate the time. It's been a great 45 minutes of spending time with you. I'm glad you were able to maintain your focus for the 45 minutes.
Was I able to?
You did it. I think you did a great job. And I look forward to maybe having you on another time, and maybe we'll make some more connections. Maybe I'll do a podcast with you and 3 or 4 other people, and so we can all make connections. How does that sound?
Right. So actually, I have a show called the Power Lunch Live Show, which is 4 guests at a time. Part of the purpose is the guests make connections. So yeah, I love that idea, and we'll definitely have to have you on the Power Lunch Show.
Okay, then I'll have to sign up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.